also suggest that those members of Wirral West who actually live in Upton Ward will remember it on Thursday next week when they elect Matthew Patrick as a Labour councillor for Upton. Now, Mr Mayor, the bedroom tax is a policy which asks people on the lowest incomes to pay more money, which they don't have, towards rents or move to smaller homes which are just literally not there. So what sort of choice is that for the people affected by the bedroom tax? And it's the most vulnerable people who are being forced into debt. And I think, as the leader mentioned earlier, people are now turning to loan sharks and having to go to food banks in desperation because of the situation they've been forced into. And all this at the same time as the Tory and Lib Dem governments are giving tax cuts to millionaires. What a disgrace that is. Now, the real answer for this issue before us tonight, Mr Mayor, is for the bedroom tax to be scrapped. And I know that there are MPs and councillors, and we've heard one this evening, who've got major misgivings about the bedroom tax and who are deeply troubled about the consequences of it. And I would always suggest it's better for any politician to recognise that something is wrong and do something about it, rather than merely just plough on and pretend everything's okay. Because it does take political courage to do that. And I think at the recent Labour Party conference which I attended, Ed Miliband summed up the real difference between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party in particular. Because when it was Murdoch against the McCanns, Cameron chose the side of Murdoch. When it was the tobacco lobby versus the cancer charities, again, Cameron took the side of the tobacco lobby. And when it was the millionaires who wanted tax cuts against people who were opposed to the bedroom tax, Cameron took the side of the millionaires. And finally, Mr Mayor, I think history will show that it was David Cameron who was the Prime Minister who introduced the bedroom tax, and Ed Miliband will be the Prime Minister who repealed the bedroom tax. I urge you to reject the Tory amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I just want to clear up the swing back later on bedroom tax. Local housing allowance is not a tax. There's a cap. There's a cap. A single person can live in a large property. It's that the rent of that property and there's a cap. So it's not. I know you find new types. It's not existing people.
This is the tax.
No. The bedroom tax. Yes, sorry, not the name. Sorry, the bedroom tax fails to every measure. What the Tories fail to mention is that apart from freeing up larger homes to its overcrowded, the fact is that there are thousands of empty 3 and 4 bedroom homes across the country, hundreds in Wirral, that are lying empty next to impossible to be less as a direct result of the bedroom tax. That's, Mr Mayor, given the present housing crisis and the amount of money, millions, that have been spent to bring those homes up to decent home standard, is a scandal from my view. To me, it speaks volumes that the Tories seem to be more interested in what we call this. We'll name given, the bedroom tax, they do about the effects, the increase in poverty, increase in the restriction of food banks, the damage to communities, the disruption to children's education, the disproportionate effect to disabled people. What's more, it looks like it's going to cost more than it saves. The bedroom tax, in my view, is a part of a wider all-out assault on the most vulnerable in society by this government. And given the Lib Dems' newfound opposition to the bedroom tax, people should have to wait until the next day of government for the bedroom tax to be abolished. It should be abolished now. Before I sit down, Mr Mayor, I just want to reflect on something I picked up on Twitter. It was the Greater Manchester Police, and whoever sent the tweet out commented on the fact that they just arrested a young mum with a child stealing baby food. To me, in 2013, that's an absolute disgrace.
Councillor Blakely, and I'm going to call Councillor Walter-Smith, and I'm going to go to the second.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, today Labour introduced a motion what they call bedroom tax, ignoring the fact that it's neither a tax nor is it being charged for all bedrooms. Labour have spent much effort last year putting out misleading information on the under occupancy surcharge, scaring old people that are just in houses and scaring those who are not getting those not getting housing benefits. The surcharge is just on those who receive it, and many others, just to score party builders complaints of the council government. Mr. Mayor, what they're not telling you is that many of the problems of social housing today are a direct result of the scandalous small number of social homes built during the years of Labour government. So those in council houses with bedrooms they don't need don't have the smaller homes to move to. This is also what families living in overcrowded homes, which we never hear Labour talking about, having got homes available to meet their needs. Another fact that Labour keep quiet about is we heard what Council Lewis about 2001, but in 2008 they introduced a tax, well not a tax, a local housing allowance. And since then, in 2008, it was acceptable for the Labour government to provide an incentive for those with housing benefits to find cheaper accommodation. Does Labour think those in social houses shouldn't have the same incentives? Mr. Mayor, it's clear that the under-occupancy charge is a Labour idea, was introduced in 2001, was then reintroduced under the local housing allowance in 2008, for tenants who rented privately owned accommodation, and all that's happened is this Labour initiative has been extended to single tenants. Mr. Mayor, this is about fairness, and what we're here tonight is a classic example of Wirral Labour hypocrisy. Mr. Mayor, the coalition government needs to reform housing benefits because it increased by nearly 50% in real terms the last couple of years. 1.8 million households away from social housing, 249,000 households from overcrowded social housing alone in 2012. And yet there are 1.5 million spare bedrooms across the working age social sector in Great Britain. Around 2/3 of these are paid for by housing benefits at a cost of 500 million. It is estimated this change will save approximately 500 million a year. The government has allocated an additional 30 million to the discretionary housing payment budget this year, and 25 million this is aimed specifically at helping disabled people who live in significantly adapted accommodation. On the 30th of July, the government announced an additional 35 million in-year funding to help claimants affected by changes to housing benefits in the social sector who need extra support. The 35 million consists of 10 million transitional payments, 5 million discretionary housing payments for the least densely populated areas, and a new 20 million discretionary housing payment fund. The total amount of discretionary housing fund for 2013-14 is £180 million. And where the child or children are able to share a bedroom because of the severe nature of the disabilities, the family may be assessed as requiring extra bedrooms. Disabled adults who do not live in specially adapted accommodation may apply for help with 20 million baseline funding that is provided annually for the discretionary housing payment scheme. And it remains the responsibility, and it is the responsibility of local authorities to assess individual circumstances. Foster carers will be allowed one spare bedroom, whether or not the child is in place with them, or they are between placements, so long as their foster child will become approved for fostering in the last 12 months. Mr. Mayor, if you live in private accommodation receiving housing benefits, these rules apply already. In social housing, we need to use what we have fairly and properly. The government are not forcing people to move, but they must make, Mr. Mayor, they must make realistic choices about how they will meet the rent on a property that is larger than the need.
Lose your jobs and see whether you can keep up your mortgage. Mind you, you've probably paid for it by now.
Mr. Mayor, as I said, the government has increased discretionary housing payments. It has done a lot to help people. Wirral's funding alone this year is 917,000, and as we hear from the leader of the Conservative group, the council has the opportunity to top this up by a further £2,293. If they're really concerned, we will see that in their budget. Mr. Mayor, councils and local housing authorities have been aware these changes have been coming for 2 years. And yet they've done nothing to prepare for the changes. I'm only finished up today. Clearly hoping their report will be scrapped. Mr. Mayor, only now some housing providers, such as Magenta Living, are being proactive and dealing with issues, and they are to be applauded for that. Mr Mayor, deep down, Labour know this is the right thing to do. Social housing tenants are political pawns, a human shield to hide behind their pain. Mr Mayor, we have the same old days. I will not be supporting
Come to bits and say that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will contain my or very long, Mr. Mayor, but,
Please. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, my colleague Councillor Blakey did mention hypocrisy, and I've actually noted that down here because the hypocrisy of some of the Labour members opposite is quite astounding tonight. Because if they really, truly and honestly care for tenants in social housing, then why did Labour members who sit on the Housing Association boards here locally in Wirral vote for a rent increase for those tenants, which makes absolute no sense at all? So you cannot sit there tonight crying crocodile tears if you voted for an increase in the people's rent. Because if you do, you have completely and morally lost any right to criticise the spurious subsidies. But Mr Mayor, everyone's bombarded everybody with figures tonight, but just quickly to sum up, 250,000 overcrowded households in England and 1.8 million households on the social housing waiting list. How can that be right? This debate is all about fairness, and it cannot be fair for somebody to live in social housing that are bigger than they need, while there are that many people waiting on overcrowded housing lists and are left in overcrowded accommodation. Hence, Mr Mayor, the government are committed to improving the fairness of this issue. And that's what it's all about, Mr Mayor, fairness.
Your car's worth more than some of the houses that we live in.
Fairness to those in overcrowded homes, fairness to those in the private rented sector, who Councillor Green quite rightly mentioned, who already have to pay, who clearly cannot have a spare bedroom subsidy at the moment under the current laws. And most importantly of all, which not an awful lot of the Labour members seem to mention here, but there has to be fairness to the hard-working councillors.
Like Matt Fry.
So, Mr Mayor, this reform will drive landlords and tenants to make better use of taxpayers' money by giving incentives to make more effective use of the housing stock in the social rented sector. And yet it is estimated that these changes will bring about somewhere in the region of £500 million a year. And the government has provided adequate finance for local governments to implement these changes. And again, as Councillor Green quite rightly says, you have the opportunity to put in an extra £2 million in your budget if you so desire. So people are not being forced to move, but they certainly are being asked to make more realistic choices as to where they live and how they will meet their rent on a property that is clearly larger than they need. And the reason behind all this, and the Labour members obviously know and grow as soon as you mention it, but the last Labour government allowed housing benefit to increase by nearly 50%, and in real terms, and in 2012, the bill stood at £24 million.
Landlords put the rents up, not the government.
That, Mr Mayor, coupled with the horrendous deficit left by the Labour government, would certainly prompt any sensible-minded income government, I won't say that, Mr Mayor, to get to grips and put this country back on a sound financial footing, and at the same time ensuring fairness for all. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Rubbish.
Councillor Davis, would you like to get?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very, very briefly, just to use my right to reply. Can I just say, I have never heard a party opposite that's such utterly out of touch. Do they go around with their eyes closed? They see the harm that this policy is doing to local residents. Jeff Green says, just top up the discretionary housing budget by £2 million. From where? From where? one-stop shops and our benefits advisors on the impact that it's having. And I think it's just worth reading a very small kind of account of the problems that our frontline staff are having to deal with. Increasing the number of distressed customers unable to pay bedroom tax. Impact of sanctions driving people into referrals to food banks, which have doubled in the last month. Staff experiencing emotional distress dealing with people with options available in terms of food vouchers and grants from local welfare assistance funds have been exhausted. Procedure put in place for staff to use when customers threaten suicide. These are the problems. These are the problems that our staff are to deal with. And Mr. Mayor, can I just say, I have, the contributions operative with the exception of Councillor Lewis, I've never heard such an uncaring, heartless, callous position as we heard tonight. Truly, the nasty party is back. So, Mr. Mayor, I will ask Council to vote against this amendment, to support the Labour Group's substantive resolution, and I would again repeat my offer, because I do believe that this is so serious that it is important that Coalition for Willing comes together after tonight and puts as much pressure as we can from the government to change this iniquitous policy. I repeat that offer again. I'll be writing to members along those lines tomorrow. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Please be quiet.
Councillor Dodd. Councillor Brickhurst.
Against.
Councillor Bridewell.
Against.
Councillor Clements. Councillor Cox. Councillor Crabtree.
Against.
Councillor George Davis.
Against.
Councillor Phil Davis.
Against.
Councillor Bill Davis.
Against.
Councillor Dodd.
Against.
Councillor Doty. Councillor Elderton. Councillor Ellis. Councillor Perks.
Against.
Councillor Gilchrist.
Against.
Councillor Daston. Councillor Green. Councillor Briggs.
Against.
Councillor Hatch. Councillor Arnold.
Against.
Councillor Hayes. Councillor Erdogan. Councillor Capilotto. Councillor Hall. Councillor Johnston. Councillor Adrian Jones.
Against.
Councillor Christine Jones. Councillor Dillon. Councillor Kelly.
Against.
Councillor Kenny.
Against.
Councillor Reach. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Alan McCall. Councillor Morley. Councillor Meakin. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Mooney. Councillor Wright. Councillor Moscow. Councillor Midlock.
Against.
Councillor Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Thornton. Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Rennie. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Rowland. Councillor Salter.
Against.
Councillor Harrison. Councillor Townsend. Councillor Watersworth.
Against.
Councillor Stapleton. Councillor Sullivan.
Against.
Councillor Sykes. Councillor Walsh.
Against.
Councillor Watt. Councillor Whitman.
Against.
Councillor Ivan Williams. Councillor Joe Williams.
Against.
Councillor Steve Williams. Councillor Williams.
That amendment was
lost 42 votes to 19, one abstention. We now vote on the substantive motion. Please listen, carry on. Thank you.
Councillor Abbey. Councillor Blaker.
Against.
Councillor Gold.
Against.
Councillor Brickhouse. Councillor Blackwell. Councillor Clements. Councillor Cox.
Against.
Councillor Crabtree. Councillor George Davis. Councillor Phil Davis. Councillor Bill Davis. Councillor Dodd. Councillor Durden. Councillor Elton. Councillor Ellis. Councillor Pratt. Councillor Gilchrist. Councillor Blackman. Councillor Green. Councillor Burton. Councillor Hackett. Councillor Harley. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Andrew Hudson. Councillor Patty Hudson. Councillor Hornby. Councillor Johnson. Councillor Adrian Jones. Councillor Christian Jones. Councillor Flynn. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kenny. Councillor Leach. Councillor Lewis. Councillor McCaffrey. Councillor Moran McCaffrey. Councillor Needham. Councillor Little.
Not voting.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Mangan. Councillor Muscat. Councillor Midrock. Councillor Norbury. Councillor Coble. Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Williams. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Rowland. Councillor Salter. Councillor Harry Smith. Councillor Tony Smith. Councillor Walter Smith. Councillor Stapleton. Councillor Sullivan.
Quiet, please.
Councillor Sykes. Councillor Walsh. Councillor Watt. Councillor Whittingham. Councillor Eileen Williams. Councillor Jerry Williams. Councillor Steve Williams. Councillor Williams.
The substantive motion is carried, 38 for, 23 against, one abstention. We now move on to item 11, recommendation for the Regeneration, Environment Policy and Performance Committee. Agenda item 11 looks at the on pages 89 to 92, provides account of the notes of the motion put to the by National Service. We have read from council on the 16th of July.
Mr Mayor, on a point of order on this agenda item, can I refer to Standing Order 7, paragraph 5, which was over the council. I'll just read. Where a motion has been referred to any committee or the Cabinet under the previous paragraph, any debate on that motion at a subsequent council meeting shall take place upon the report or the recommendation of the committee or the Cabinet, and there shall be no separate debate upon the motion itself. That's the Standing Order 7, paragraph 5. Mr Mayor, at a council meeting on the 15th of July, a motion in my name entitled Local Investment in Rail, High Speed 2 and Borderlands Railway was referred to the Leader of the Council. That decision is recorded